Hello and welcome back to another episode of Project Stargate. I'm your host, Mark Brenner. Today on Project Stargate, we have the experiencers with Denise Stoner. Denise Stoner is a colleague and friend of Kathleen Martin, who was on our previous episode. She is the co author of the book Abduction Files, which we featured on our last episode. She's been investigating the various paranormal research fields for over 40 years. She is also assistant state director for the Florida Mutual UFO Network. Also, there's a sub project within the Mutual UFO Network called the Experiencer Resource Team, and she is assistant to the director of that program as well. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to Project Stargate Denise Stoner. Thank you so much for being with us and welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Denise, you've been friends with Kathleen for a very long time, and how
Yes,
long
I
how
have.
how long has you go back 40 years into the research, and can you tell us a little bit about why you got into this research field, and also include a little bit, if you will, about how you and Kathleen linked up and y'all developed this friendship and partnership in the MUFON?
Sure, you'll be fascinated with that part of it. It's kind of unusual. But when I was 2.5 years old, my mom was in the hospital giving birth to my sister. And I was with my grandfather for the first time, taking care of me. And I had climbed up on a sofa backed by a window, and I was looking out, and I saw a huge, huge yellow egg in the sky. And because I was just little, my brain told me it was Humpty Dumpty, if we remember that nursery rhyme. And so my grandfather came in and I asked him what Humpty Dumpty was doing in the sky. And I can remember right now the fear on his face. He was afraid. Even though he had fought in the trenches in World War I, all of those things, and protective of his family, he decided it was going to be bedtime for me. And we went upstairs, put me to bed, and the wallpaper I had was all full of nursery rhyme characters. And I was just lying there looking for Humpty Dumpty in the wallpaper when a little character dressed in a hooded outfit like a monk came out of the wallpaper and walked up to my bed. And he had something in his hand that was long and narrow with a light on the end of it. And with the other hand, it was in a kind of a long sleeve. I couldn't see his hands. And he reached out for me. I took his hand, no fear, walked out of the room into the hallway, and he touched the wallpaper with that tool, and we went right through the wallpaper.
Wow, that's very common of
Uh-huh.
what I've uncovered during my many years of research and some other
Yeah.
experiences I've had as well.
Yes. So I've had, oh, many experiences leading up to joining the Mutual UFO Network, and then became an assistant state director, and I held meetings here. So one day I had a room full of people ready to start the meeting, and this little woman walked in the door. And when I looked at her, I knew who she was. It was Kathleen Martin. But I didn't want to say anything because, you're not sure. Wasn't totally positive. She was very quiet and unassuming, just sat down at the end of the table. And I just watched her paying a lot of attention to everything that was said. We were sharing experiences that day. And so at lunchtime, she came up. We had taken a break in the restaurant. Everybody was getting food. And she came up and introduced herself. And I said, "Don't you live in New England?" And she said, "Not anymore." So I didn't quite feel comfortable enough to start to talk to her about my experiences yet. So I waited, had another meeting. She showed up, and I said, "I've had some experiences." And I told her about one that I can explain with my husband and my daughter in South Park, Colorado. And we had over 2.5 hours of missing time and an odometer that didn't read as if we had moved a foot. And so she said, "I'd like to look into that with you or for you if you would appreciate it." that, my doing that. Of course I would. So I invited her for lunch at my home, and she came, and we were sitting talking, and just in our conversation, she explained about her work in the field and what she would like to do. And then I said something about when we lived in Gunnison, Colorado. And she looked kind of shocked and said, "When did you live there?" And I told her how we'd moved back and forth between there and Denver until we finally got settled. And she told me that she lived at the same time about 30 minutes down the road from us, in the way up in the mountains, and that she had seen a UFO. I had spoken to her about my husband seeing the first UFO in broad daylight. He'd never seen one. And he came to get me to look at it. We were observing it. She was probably seeing it at the same time on the same day. It was kind of dancing between the mountains. A big kind of brushed gold craft that just moved. It was doing all kinds of displays, shooting up in the air, moving around the rim of the mountains. And when it disappeared, it went so fast. You didn't have time to breathe. So she was very surprised that she was there and possibly, and that had seen the craft when she was walking home from teaching school. So we, from then on, began to work on this book together and spent a lot of time together. We still do. And we also do some research, some of it, which is in the back of that book. And it's all about commonalities among experiencers. So it's been, I think, about 12 years now since we've
Wow.
been friends. Yep. Yep.
That's a lot. That's a lot. It seems like you guys really accomplished a lot during the course of that 12 years together. Now, your experiences, as you know, we've had some discussions previously over
Hmm.
the phone and whatnot about.
Right.
We've kind of done some comparison of my experiences and your experiences. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about some of the things that's happened to you throughout your life?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Connecticut, so Connecticut Yankee. And my dad at the time was going to school so that he could get a job in aerospace. And his big goal was to move out west. So just as I was starting high school, we sold the house, picked up bag and baggage, and moved to California. And I had been having experiences. Some mentioned in the book. First, what I thought was a dream, we don't believe it was now, of a tall, skinny man, very tall, chasing me when I was little. And I called him the oil can man. Do you remember the old oil cans that had a long spout on the end and you had to push the top to drip the oil out and it made a popping noise?
Yes, I do. My grandfather actually had one.
Uh
He was a
huh.
farmer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this man had something similar on the end of his arm. And I think it was used at the time, just a guess, to put me to sleep or in a state of where I wouldn't remember. But he would chase me, and that, whether it was an arm or some kind of instrument, would stretch as fast as I could run and drip this liquid on my neck. And so sometimes I found myself at home and I would walk through the front door and up the stairs and go to bed. Nobody shut their doors in this small New England town. Cars were left open, windows open, doors open, and so we could just walk in. So my parents never knew I was missing. And one night when I was taken, my parents were in their room, and my dad looked out his window, which was right down the hall, and saw these gigantic lights coming at the window. And he told my mom they were just had just gone to bed. If that thing comes any closer, it's going to hit the house. And the next thing he knew, it was morning.
Wow.
And that's not the way my dad would have reacted. Not at all. He would have come and rescue the kid, get the kids out of there, get my grandparents up. But no. So he knew something happened, and it frightened him. Um, but he didn't know what to think of it for sure, what it was. So I had been taken, and I had seen my little sister, who was in the crib next to me, floated over the top and taken after she was born. So this man, entity, whatever he was, also, or one like him, showed up in California when I was walking home, and it was down a hill to my house. And I just felt it was close to sundown, and I felt something. You can tell when you're being followed sometimes. So I turned around, and there was that figure, just walking slowly. So I walked faster, he walked faster. I started to run, he ran. I made it to my girlfriend's house, which was two doors from us. We lived in very long ranch style homes. So I had a ways to go to get to my house. And I knew I could just run into her home. And I did. And her dad was there. And I said, "Someone's chasing me." I didn't try to describe it. And he called the police, and he had us, there were six children, and he had us all sit on sofas and chairs in our family room. It was just like mine, with sliding glass doors and big backyards. So we were sitting there, and we saw the policeman's flashlight moving back and forth in the yard, way at the far end. And then this figure was suddenly at the sliding glass door. And I heard the cop make kind of a loud noise, like he saw it, and he did not go after it. It must have startled him badly enough. He ran out the gate and came around to the front door
Wow,
and
that's
told,
very telling. That's
y-
extremely telling, if you don't mind me
yes,
interjecting. For a
true.
trained law enforcement
Yep.
professional who's used to seeing the worst of the worst of the worst,
Yeah,
and not unlike a lot of our service members in the military, they're
hmm,
used to seeing the worst of the worst of the worst. Well, these guys see it even more often,
they do.
and for
Yeah.
him to stand there and be
Yeah.
reluctant to investigate this further is very telling to me. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So knocked on the front door, and my friend's dad answered, and the policeman said, "I don't know what that is, and I don't have a partner with me tonight, so I'm leaving. I don't know how you're going to deal with this." He got in his car and he took off.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was that. What happened then to get me home? My friend's dad opened the front door, stood outside, and watched me. And I don't know if that would have done any good. I wasn't bothered any further that night. And I went home, and that was that episode or
Yeah.
event. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So throughout would you say would it be fair to say that this is a generational event?
Yes. Absolutely. And some from the studies and some of the research we've done, we've pretty much proven it that it is generational. Could be something genetic in some cases, but we can't say positively. It's a probability. Yeah.
Right. Because
Hmm.
there's always people like, I just want to use this gentleman as example, Travis Walton. I've never
Hmm.
heard of any other experience he's had other than what he had in Arizona that one time
Yes.
on the job.
Yes.
Sometimes it seems like it's a random. It's just it could. Sometimes it seems like it's kind of a random event, and then,
Yes.
but in most cases that I have heard of, and it seems, and even from some of my personal experiences, I remember, I do believe it is mostly a generational thing.
Yes. True. And Travis believes that his was an accident. They saw the craft, they saw the beam. He was going to be foolish enough to get out, stand under it. He changed his thoughts and what he considered to be the truth, after a few years, because he had some dreams, he had some help with it, with full recall. And he at first was scared and believed he was taken, and they stole him for 5 days and all of that. He thinks he had died, or had a massive heart attack, because there was evidence of it in some of his medical exams. And these entities wanted to help him, took him aboard the craft, and saved his life.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, yes.
Because the way he described it is when this beam hit him, it was like a huge surge of electricity or
Hmm.
some kind of energy like that. And it seems to me like that would probably do God knows what to a human body.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So then when he woke up, and he didn't completely recall this for a few years, but you can help people with their memories. That's one of the things I do. And he woke up and he recalls looking up and seeing the craft leaving, and they had returned him. Yeah.
Where we're definitely going to have to get him on Project Stargate one of these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that your work with the Mutual UFO Network is absolutely fascinating. Could you tell us a little bit about your history with that?
Yeah, since about 2002 or 2003, I became a field investigator for them. There's training and lots of learning, and having the background that I did, um, it came easy for me. And I had a wonderful state director at the time. He's passed away, but he was an experiencer at Gulf Breeze. Do you know about Gulf Breeze?
Yes,
Yes, I think
I am
everybody.
definitely familiar with Gulf Breeze.
Uh,
I me like thousands and thousands of people. I grew up watching Unsolved Mysteries.
there you go. But he had an experience because he lived there his whole life. So he watched these things buzzing around and showing off. And he went down to the beach one day because he was an investigator, state director for Florida at the time. And they were watching this craft flying out above the water. They'd gone under the bridge instead of standing in the normal place where people and tourists went to watch and observe. And all of a sudden, a bright light flashed out of this thing. And it was pretty big, had windows. They could see shadows moving inside the windows. And the next thing he recalled was finding himself all the way up the beach, over the sand dunes, and on the edge of the sidewalk. And he'd been standing near the water.
Wow.
So I spoke to two other people that were there at the time. Same thing happened to them. So he taught me what he knew as far as investigation. And then he was grooming me to become the chief investigator, which I was, and holding meetings, and went on from there. But I had a job with the Navy where I did background investigations for new military coming in who wanted to go into the nuclear power program, and they had to be squeaky clean. So I received their information and I did their investigation and approved them or sent it to our legal department for resolution.
Wow, that's impressive. Good,
Yeah.
amazing resume.
So um, that's what I've done for years, since about 2002, 2003. And then Kathleen Martin began the Experiencers Resource Team. I was in right in the beginning with her. She did not want to completely run this thing by herself. It's huge now. There's over 40 some odd members all over the world who are supporting abductees. And we have to train them. What do they do? And how do we find them? They fill out a questionnaire with MUFON.com. And then that goes down to our team, and we are assigned whichever one we receive.
Wow, that's
So,
interesting. This
mhm,
questionnaire, when I read the book that you and Kathleen and a few other people actually co-wrote together, it seems, I
mhm.
noticed at the end of each chapter, you guys had this really elaborate questionnaire. And
Mhm.
is that one of the ones that was approved by MUFON that you guys developed?
No, this questionnaire has actually 30 questions. We've not changed it since the beginning, other than one or two. It seems to suit the purpose. And some of the questions I thought of, some Kathleen thought of, and some friends in the business helped us out to make the final decision. So there were some odd things in there. We've left it in because several people asked us to. For instance, do you have a strong craving for salt? And how do you tell that? You have to have other symptoms and signs, but it's when you put a dinner plate down in front of you or some sort of food source and you automatically pick that salt up and shake it on the food before you even taste it. Yeah.
Wow. That's a
And it,
very interesting detail that you guys have
mhm,
uncovered.
uh-huh, yeah.
How
And it
many years of
won't show
research was
up.
that?
Oh gosh.
Over just broad spectrum? How many
Ve-
years of research did it take you to get to these details like that?
It's been, I would say, maybe 15. Yeah, it's a
Wow.
gradual thing. We start picking things up and then we start asking questions. We'll add it into an interview with someone. Just, oh, by the way, do you have so and so? Have you ever experienced this? And they might go, yes, why? You know. Yeah. So, yeah, we have developed that. And my job and all the others on the team is to support people who fully believe that they have been abducted or had an experience with entities from some sort of craft that's not from here. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've done a lot of amazing research with some of the other people that MUFON has employed over the years to do this research.
Hmm.
Um, as far as I want to go somewhere real quick, and then
Sure.
I'll hand it back off to you.
Hmm.
Now, whenever one of the things that we have people in the past like John Mack, Dr. John Mack.
Yes.
We
Yes.
have people like him and Bud Hopkins.
Yeah.
Has that research influenced you in your methodology compared to other people, or who would you say would be the most influential as far as developing your methodologies for research and whatnot and investigative?
Well, John Mack, for one, um, when he just took the chance, belonging to that college, that institute, and deciding he was going to make this a part of his work. Um, I read everything he wrote, and then I decided what I could make use of. I went and took hypnosis courses and became certified in regressive forensic hypnosis. Um, there's a couple of other people, of course, Bud Hopkins, and he had his own methodology. um, he was just feeling his way through this back when he was uh, following, well, the UFO business, if you want to call it that. He had to decide for himself what to do, what was safe, what wasn't, how would it affect the experiencer or the abductee, as they called them back then. So he was feeling his way through. Before he died, there were some things that he had established that, sure, I use them, sit on other people. Um, and then there have been others in my life. I worked with a doctor, Bob Romack, in Denver, Colorado. He's passed away also. I went to him as a guinea pig. He was going to test me as a hypnotic subject to see if he could use it for pain killing and a better source of quitting smoking. And because I was a heavy smoker back then. And so he taught me a lot. I was with him for 5 years. We discovered we both had an interest in this field, and this is back in the 80s. And so that one for sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's
And
it.
then Kathy, of course, and we took that forensic course through the Guild of Hypnotists together. And then we each developed our own methods.
Wow, that's amazing how that, and that's
Yeah.
why I always tell people to have an open mind, because whether we agree or disagree with someone else's conclusions,
Hmm.
we can always learn from those people.
We
Everybody,
can.
they see the duck, they see it quacking like a duck and walking like a duck, and to them it's a
Yeah.
duck, and
Yes.
there's a reason why it's a duck to them, and
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. But as far as now, what you're doing, your research has evolved a little bit to include
Mm.
some different paranormal subjects. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about why you started branching out into other paranormal research fields,
Hmm.
and what you've concluded with that?
Yeah, sure. We started receiving calls from people, and we thought, okay, this is a possible abductee or experiencer. And then they would say, I can feel more comfortable now that so many have come ahead of me and told their stories. They're feeling freer to release their emotions and look for support. But then they'll say, there's something else. And of course, we're there to listen. So, what is it you have to say? And they start to mention things that are not ETs. They're probably spirits. We're studying that, or they're some sort of interdimensional in between. Are they between lives, and they don't look the same? Are they an actual form of an ET? What is it all about? Or they'll call and say, there was a funny orb in my room, and it was appearing intelligent because it made a sound, because it directed where it was going, where it wanted me to look, how it entered and exited. And so we've begun to realize, yes, there are orbs that come from craft, usually a huge mothership. If these things come in through someone's bedroom window, right through the glass, and back out that way, people are so stunned they forget to look out and then look up, because there have been huge mother crafts floating above their home. And these things will go back up and re enter the craft before it takes off. So, higher technology for the craft, the intelligent operators of those also, because they're not having to all the time come into our rooms. They're sending whatever these little orb like, maybe their form of drone, only much advanced. So that's how you look at that. And then the other type of orb can begin to use our energy, our battery operated equipment, to form and fully manifest. Some of them do, some don't. But if you watch, you might see the eyes, nose, mouth form, and it looks more spirit like. And it's a little bit more drifty, and it possibly would cause a book to fall off your shelf if you're not having regular poltergeist activity, or have brought something into your home and with an object you've purchased. So we go into all of that. It's a long, long package of things, that one has to study and learn about. Yeah.
That's about during the course of my. I've said this before in some previous podcasts, but during the course of my research for the last, I've only been at it for about 16 years, but
Hmm.
I uh, I started researching things like little things like missing time, UFO sightings, and then
Hmm.
all that. I started once I started really digging into that, trying to explain things that happened to me. It led me into learning about psychic phenomenon, general parapsychology, and then that led me
Right.
into things like recent, as far as last few years go, like Bigfoot and
Hmm.
cryptozoology, and then leading me back to the UFO thing. It's like a
Yeah,
circle. It's
it
like it goes
is.
from one point to another point to another point,
Yeah.
and it's fascinating because it's almost like that. A lot of these places, like I want to use a generic example, I guess, or a commonly used example is a better term.
Hmm.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes.
That is a hodgepodge of high strangeness. We have
Yeah.
UFO sightings almost every day. We
Yes.
have weird looking animals. We
Hmm.
have missing. I've heard of missing time experiences. I've heard of
Yeah.
the ranch houses are haunted, poltergeist
Yeah.
phenomenon, apparitions. You know, for everything from A to Z. What I have to wonder is, are these all these different types of entities that are not human, are they in fact using, maybe possibly using the same type of portal to go from where they're at to us?
Oh, one of my thoughts exactly. Um, and I don't know where it is right at the moment, but I have a picture that a friend took on a ranch, and you can actually see the opening. And there's a figure at the bottom of it, curled up in a fetal position. It's an ET prepared to drop out of that onto that ground where she worked, and they entered the home. She also saw something that looked like the Sasquatch do the same thing. And if you looked, she got a glimpse one time walking in that field, saw this portal, and it looks like a gigantic sunbeam, huge. And she saw up to the other end, and it looked like another place.
Wow.
She got a glimpse, and we had a pilot fly over. Unbeknownst to him, that thing was there, and he reported looking down into it and being able to avoid it because it made him afraid. His instruments were acting crazy like the Bermuda Triangle, and he saw another whole world from what was actually below him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting because right now there's a place. I live in North Georgia, and there's a place
Yeah.
really close to here that I actually used to live in. It's a little town called Ball Ground, and
Oh.
the that county and the counties that are neighboring that county, there's an area where there's a high degree of paranormal phenomenon,
Uh-huh.
like you would see in places like you're describing.
Right.
Um, I'm in the slow process of investigating that, and we're going to bring more information in the
Oh,
future. But I do believe there
okay.
may be triangle areas, smaller or bigger, in various different parts of the world.
Do you happen to know if there is a lake, a big lake there known as the most haunted lake in the US?
Yes,
Okay, I
I
know
live
where
right
it
next to
is.
it.
I know
I
where
live
it
right
is.
next to it.
Okay.
It is we're actually me and my couple of my colleagues, we're actually working on that right now. We're going
Oh,
to
good.
definitely keep you in the loop as to what
Oh,
we
that would be
plan with that.
wonderful. That'd be
Um,
wonderful. Actually, Kathleen's son does not live far from there, and he's heard about it. And yeah, I'm sure he's interested too, but I do not give away locations because it
yeah,
can
definitely.
completely ruin your investigation of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's not a the fun thing about this for me at least, there's actually not a whole lot of there's you have these people that you hear say, and you hear people
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, and their uncles, brothers, cousin
Yeah.
saw the lady on the lake, which is an actual phenomenon, by the way.
Uh-huh.
But I we're gonna get to the bottom of this at some point, and we're gonna bring this
Uh,
information to everybody. Um,
yes.
I think this is a pretty good point to take a short break. But
Okay.
when we come back, I want to talk about anything that you're working on now that you'd like to talk about and share with the listeners.
Sure.
This is a riveting conversation. We have the experiencers with Denise Stoner here on Project Stargate. We'll be right back.